It started with a stage that had hosted voices of history, calls for justice, for unity, for hope. The kind of stage where you expect inspiration, not confrontation. And yet, on that night, something shifted. Something subtle at first, almost imperceptible to the untrained eye. And then, unmistakable. A moment that would ripple through Hollywood, through social media, and through the public imagination with a speed that seemed almost cruel in its swiftness. What happens when two powerful figures, each commanding their own kind of respect, collide in a space meant for reverence? When the reverence itself becomes a stage for tension. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. I want you to imagine the room. Not the cameras, not the flashes, but the human energy in the air. Hundreds of eyes fixed forward, the hum of anticipation almost tactile. Celebrities dressed in black ties and gowns, the press hovering just beyond, smartphones poised. And at the center, Viola Davis, a figure whose presence commands not just attention, but a kind of reverent pause. Every movement she makes, every word she utters, carries weight. Her history, her advocacy, her career, all of it is layered into the silence that follows her steps. People know, even subconsciously, that she is someone who will not tolerate chaos, will not entertain disruption lightly. And yet, there is Meghan Markle. Standing near the edge of the stage, her own history and media-fueled narrative trailing her like a shadow. Intentions unclear, eyes intent, and then the approach. But before we even get to that moment, the action itself, there is the tension in the air that night. It was subtle, a tilt of a head, a glance that lingers too long, a whisper in the ear that may or may not have been heard. I can almost feel it, even now. The collective intake of breath as the room registers the slightest deviation from expectation. And it's here, in these micro moments, that the story truly begins. Not with the confrontation itself, but with the weight of what precedes it. Reputation, expectation, and the unspoken rules of presence in spaces that are, on the surface, celebratory, but underneath, rigidly hierarchical. Why does this matter? Because it's not just about two women on a stage. It's about the intersection of influence, race, gender, and public perception in a moment where every second is scrutinized. When Viola reacts, when Meghan moves, the cameras will capture a fraction of the truth. But truth is never just what is visible. It's what is felt. And for those present, in that room, the emotional stakes are enormous. How do you navigate admiration and authority in the same breath? How do you honor legacy while asserting your own voice? Questions like these are rarely simple, and the answers even less so. And yet, the public sees a clip. They see a frozen frame of movement, a glance, a moment that is instantly dissected. They comment. They speculate. They judge. But in that fraction of a second, captured and amplified, what they cannot see is the build-up. The rehearsed movements, the careful choreography of awards, the staff instructions, the audience's subtle cues, the internal calculation of each person involved. Each gesture, how long to pause before applauding, how far to move across a stage, is a negotiation of power and presence. And suddenly, that negotiation becomes the epicenter of an unfolding drama that no one could have scripted. We are not here to sensationalize. There is no need. The tension is already real. It pulses beneath every word Viola speaks, beneath every step Meghan takes. It's in the way the audience shifts uncomfortably, in the flicker of recognition in the corner of someone's eye, in the very air of expectation that hangs heavy above the stage. It is the quiet knowledge that this is no ordinary night, no ordinary awards ceremony. This is a collision of past and present, of expectation and action, of the public gaze and private intent. And yet, even in this charged atmosphere, there is restraint. Not everyone reacts immediately. Some wait, some watch, some calculate. This is where narrative tension lives, in the spaces between action and reaction, in the unspoken dialogue that fills the room. Every observer, celebrity, staff, journalist, guest, plays a part in the silent drama unfolding before the cameras even click. And every choice, every hesitated step, every blink of the eye contributes to the story that will later erupt across headlines and feeds worldwide. What makes this moment remarkable is how layered it is. At once, it is personal, public, performative, and political. Viola Davis does not act in a vacuum. She carries decades of cultural expectation, professional weight, and moral authority. Meghan Markle does not act in a vacuum either. Her every movement is tracked, interpreted, dissected through lenses of history, media narrative, and personal expectation. The collision on that stage is therefore more than physical or visual. It is symbolic. It is the embodiment of questions many of us have, whether consciously or not. Who speaks? Who is heard? Who is allowed to step forward? And who is expected to step back? And here's the part that makes the tension unbearable. Because while the cameras focus on what seems like a simple attempt to approach, the real drama is in the anticipation, in the thought processes, in the micro moments that are almost invisible. The glance exchanged, the pause that lengthens just enough to make people question what will happen next, the subtle tightening of a jaw, the unspoken calculations of propriety versus presence. These are the things that transform an ordinary awards ceremony into a moment that will be dissected for weeks, months, perhaps even years. So the question becomes not just what happened, but why. Why did this moment occur at this particular event? Why now? And perhaps most importantly, what does it say about influence, authority, and the unspoken hierarchies that govern spaces that claim to celebrate equality, justice, and community? It is a question that lingers in the air, as heavy and subtle as the anticipation that preceded the movement on stage. And as the night wore on, as the speech continued, the subtle signals of tension only grew. A slight hesitation in applause, a shift in posture, the careful measurement of every step taken. Then, almost imperceptibly at first, the approach began. And in that approach, though brief, though perhaps easily overlooked by someone not paying full attention, everything changed. It was a moment that seemed almost inevitable, yet wholly unpredictable. It was the tipping point, and it would reverberate far beyond the walls of that theater, far beyond the awards themselves, into the court of public opinion, into the media frenzy that was already building even before the night had ended. The night began like any other, at least on the surface. The MLK Jr. Beloved Community Awards, 2026 edition, had been carefully planned for months. Invitations were sent weeks in advance, press schedules coordinated to the minute, and staff briefed on every detail. Every detail except for what would eventually unfold. But even in the careful choreography of event planning, some things can't be predicted. Some things slip through. And some moments, subtle at first, accumulate into something almost palpable, a tension that hangs in the air and refuses to be ignored. Picture the scene. The entrance hall, alive with the low murmur of voices. Guests arriving, glancing around, taking in the setting. The red carpet stretches before them, lined with photographers and reporters, cameras flashing in bursts. Celebrities in gowns and tuxedos smile politely for the lenses, wave, and then retreat inward. Their faces are composed, but you can feel the undercurrent of anticipation. The air is thick, not just with perfume and cologne, but with expectation. Everyone knows this is a night that matters. Inside the theater, the space is meticulously arranged. Rows of seats aligned perfectly, the stage polished and lit with deliberate care. There's a sense of ceremony that can almost be felt physically, a reverence that hovers above the audience. The event is, after all, dedicated to the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., a man whose vision, struggle, and triumph remain touchstones for civil rights and social justice. And yet, human nature being what it is, even this solemnity cannot fully contain the interplay of ego, reputation, and personal stakes that exists in any room filled with powerful personalities. Viola Davis enters first, of course. The way she moves, even when she's not speaking, is magnetic. It's in the tilt of her head, the precision of her steps, the subtle engagement with everyone she passes. She commands the room not because she demands attention, but because attention follows her. Every small movement carries weight. She is poised, measured, prepared for any potential disruption. And she has seen a great deal of disruption in her career. Media narratives, public expectation, personal scrutiny. She knows how to handle it. And yet, There is an unpredictability to human interaction that even she cannot always control. Meghan Markle is not far behind. Her presence in this context is both expected and scrutinized. A figure whose every appearance is dissected, whose every movement carries layers of narrative beyond her control. She enters the room with confidence, but the confidence is interwoven with the awareness of being watched, of being judged. There's a tension there, subtle but real, a tension that seems to simmer beneath polite smiles and carefully curated gestures. The audience, too, is part of this invisible choreography. Some are seated in anticipation of speeches, awards, performances, and the celebration of community. Others are there to witness celebrities, to feel the thrill of proximity to fame. And still others, journalists, photographers, scan every face for signs of intrigue, conflict, or drama. The room is a mix of reverence, curiosity, and calculated observation. And the way the audience behaves, even subtly, influences the energy of the stage. Energy flows both ways. The performers feel it, and the audience feeds off it. It's in these micro moments that the narrative of the night begins to form. A brief exchange of glances, a slight hesitation in movement, a murmur among the staff. These are the signs that something is shifting. The redirection of attention, even the smallest, almost imperceptible gestures, begin to accumulate. There's a pressure that builds, unseen but unmistakable, the kind that suggests the ordinary flow of an awards ceremony is about to be disrupted. And then the speeches begin. Viola steps up to the microphone, her presence filling the space not just physically, but emotionally. The audience listens, rapt, to every word. Her voice, measured and deliberate, carries authority. It is warm but firm, commanding respect while also conveying the gravity of the message. It is precisely the kind of voice that can transform a room, shape perception, and momentarily suspend disbelief. You can feel the emotional charge in the theater. This is not merely performance. This is truth spoken in a space that demands attentiveness. But as Viola speaks, there's a subtle shift. Something at the edge of the stage draws attention, just enough to be noticed by those paying close attention. A movement, a presence, an intent. Meghan is near, perhaps closer than most expected, and there's a quality to the way she positions herself that hints at anticipation, at planning, at the potential to intersect with Viola's carefully staged moment. The audience may not yet grasp it, but those who are alert, staff, photographers, a few discerning guests, can sense it. And here is the part that is rarely captured on camera. The energy in the room begins to warp slightly. You can almost see it in the subtle shifts of posture, the tightening of shoulders, the quickening of breaths. There's a silent negotiation happening, a measurement of boundaries, an evaluation of risk. Viola, of course, remains composed, but even her composure is part of the equation. She registers the presence, calculates the timing, considers the implications. Every second matters. It is impossible to overstate how much human behavior is involved in this prelude. Nothing is accidental. Not the way Viola stands at the podium, not the slight lean of Meghan's posture, not the eyes that flicker between audience and stage. Each gesture, each pause, each glance is an unspoken communication. And the stakes are amplified because this is not just an ordinary audience. It is a public one that will replay every frame, every moment, online, in social feeds, and in commentary for days afterward. Some might argue that this is a minor infraction of protocol, a small misstep in a formal setting. But in a room of this magnitude, with this kind of history and visibility, even small deviations carry enormous weight. The tension is cumulative, and by the time the first movement toward the stage occurs, the audience is already primed. They may not know it, but they feel it. There is a charge in the air, a quiet expectation that something is about to unfold. The night progresses with careful attention. The speeches continue. The award presentations follow. And yet, at the periphery, the undercurrent grows. Staff are aware of slight deviations, whispers are exchanged, and a few observers note the intensity of the glances being exchanged. The event, meant to be a celebration of legacy and community, has become layered with anticipation. And anticipation, when left unresolved, transforms into tension. By the time Viola's speech reaches its emotional peaks, there is a sense of impending collision. It is subtle, almost invisible, but undeniable. Every movement, every glance, every gesture has contributed to the emotional momentum. And when Meghan begins her approach, when she steps toward the stage with purpose, it is not just an action. It is the culmination of every calculated and instinctual choice made in the minutes leading up to it. The room is holding its breath, even if most of the people in it do not consciously realize it. What happens next will not just be a matter of movement or reaction. It will be a matter of perception, of influence, of control over narrative. And perception, in spaces like this, often matters more than the act itself. Because in the age of instant media, where a split-second decision can define public opinion, the way a moment is seen is almost always more consequential than what actually occurs. And as Meghan takes that step, deliberate and intentional, the tension that has been building for over an hour becomes nearly unbearable. Staff instinctively shift positions, photographers raise their cameras, the audience leans forward slightly, and Viola's awareness sharpens. She does not speak yet, but every subtle movement, the tilt of her head, the tightening of her jaw, the pause in her speech, is a silent communication that something is about to demand attention. And then, in that almost imperceptible instant, the collision of intention and presence begins. What happens next, though, is not yet clear. The audience sees motion. The cameras capture a fraction of what unfolds. But the full story, the motivations, the decisions, the small human hesitations and calculations that led to this, is not yet visible. And it is in that space of uncertainty that the drama of the night truly takes root.